Welcome to the Great People Show, your guide to greatness, your GPS to excellence. Here's your host, J.J. White.
Good morning, America. My name is J.J. White. I'm the host of the Great People Show, and in the Great People studio with us is our co-host, Mr. James Muncie. Good morning, James.
Good morning, JJ.
What's up, brother?
How you doing?
Are you ready to do this day?
I've been ready for the last 10 minutes.
Folks, let's do this day. And I think that's probably the best way to start off any day is just saying that to yourself. Let's do this day.
Let's do it.
Let's do this day because I don't know about you all, but too often I wake up a little earlier than I wish I would, sometimes a little later than I wish I would, and I'm just not ready for the day. My mind is not in it. My heart's not in it. I just can't. Does that happen to you?
All the time.
I can't explain it.
Yep. I feel like I should wake up, be thankful that I have lived to see another sunrise and ready to attack the day. But let's face it, that doesn't happen every day.
It doesn't.
It doesn't happen most days, I would say.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And that really bothers me. That's been bothering me way more than it ever has recently. And I think being on the radio and doing the Great People Show has been a big driver for that.
Yeah.
Because so many people reach out to us and we're here for so many other people looking for advice on those subjects that I'm just not in the zone that I feel like I should be.
Well, maybe I'm always wake up feeling that way on Thursday mornings. We need to go to a daily show.
Oh, well. Let's do it.
That's another conversation.
Let's do it. Asher, we need to get that on the calendar. More days. And he's shaking his head. Well, it wasn't a yes or no. It was more of a wobble over there. So we want to thank you all for being with us here. You may be listening to us on 97.7 FM, 820 AM, The Answer in Richmond, Virginia. You may be listening to us on the web at 820theanswer.com. And we're on Facebook Live, whether you're catching the show live or just watching the replay, facebook.com/Great People Show. And, of course, on Apple Podcast. That's
so
where a
places.
lot of people catch us. Yep. You have to be.
Yep.
You have to be in today's world. You have to be as many places as you can because we live in a very distracted world.
We do.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why we feel the way we do when we wake up is that we're pretty distracted. I think one of the drivers in people feeling uncomfortable in their life or unsure about where they're at or unsure about where they're going has a lot to do with how they feel like they fit in. And in preparation of today's show, I'm going to jump right into a story.
Okay.
I'm not going to say his full real name simply because I don't have permission to share this story. I met this young man on Tuesday, and we met in anticipation of talking about his goals, of where he wanted to go in life, and where I start. I don't start with the goal. I start with what's in your way today.
Okay.
That rhymes.
Did you plan
What's in your way today? I'm not going to sing. This is not a singing station.
Please
I am not a singing person. Trust me on this. That what is in your way today, because we really can't even think about the goals, because sometimes when people realize what's in their way, they don't even have the right goals.
Right.
And if we start with the wrong goal, then it's like a ship leaving the port. If that ship's off just by a few inches and it's going across the world, it's going to end up on a different continent. I mean, we have to make sure that we're looking at the here and now. And that's the purpose of the show. We're looking at the here and now in your life to try to figure out, to try to see what could be just a little bit better.
Yep.
So that we don't have to feel uncomfortable. Being successful in life and however you manage that success. By the way, that needs to be a show topic in and itself. What is success? Because when we went to Facebook on Monday with this show's topic, the big question was, well, what do you mean by success? And I'll get into more of that later. But when I sat down with this young man, I say he's young. He's in his mid to late 20s. He's the characteristic of the millennial. And we love to paint millennials with a big wide brush, right? If you were born in this date range, then you're a millennial. Therefore, you are X, Y, and Z. And I do think that he is indicative of millennials in this particular category that I'm about ready to describe. He calls himself an introvert.
Okay.
And I'm going to fast forward into the story a little bit. His wife is an extrovert. So when he recognized, and by the way, he's in a job that completely requires extroversion. Okay. That's an important piece of context here. And which is really the reason why I'm talking to him. He is very uncomfortable in a lot of the things that he has to do in his job. Not everything, not even half. There's over half of his job that he feels very comfortable in because it doesn't really involve working with a lot of people. It's only whenever he starts to get around more people, and then in the personal side, if he's in social situations with his wife, that he feels very uncomfortable. And that's when he starts to recognize, hey, I'm an introvert. I don't necessarily like this, but I know I need to do it.
Okay.
So he pushes himself out of his comfort zone. And we know what happens whenever you get out of your comfort zone. You get anxious.
Mm-hmm.
You get a little stressed out. You get a little nervous. And who wants to feel this way?
Oh, it's terrible. I completely empathize with him.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And so we start to really dig into this discussion. And in the scheme of things, he's young. He's probably 1/4 of the way through his life. So he is now at a situation where he's already not being who he wants to be in front of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is just one of the probably worst situations you can be in your life is if you're trying to pretend to be somebody else.
Right.
And here we are, day or two after Election Day. And I don't think there's probably more context to put around being somebody that you're really not than whenever we watch a lot of politicians go and get elected, and we go to the polls and have to pick the least fake one.
Yep.
In many cases.
Yeah, and the other one is painted as a horrible person in many cases, where 99% of the time both candidates are good people with differing points of view, but they paint each other to be evil.
And in this situation, let's call him Tom. Let's just call him Tom for the federal protection part of this story. So Tom is in search. What he thinks he's in search of is a new life to fit into the mold that maybe other people want him to fit into.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
It's not going to work. And I never felt that way about his wife. I never picked up that his wife wants them to be this way. It's really work. Mm-hmm. It's really the professional side. So by the time we're done talking, he realizes, there's a lot of strength in introversion. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of strength. There's a lot of giftedness in introversion. And I felt like we walked away from this conversation, if for one thing, him realizing the most important thing for Tom is to feel comfortable with who he is and just be his authentic self. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, at the end of the day, the authentic always win. You've heard that saying, good guys finish last, whatever. Authentic people always win in this world.
Yes. I mean, we'll call his wife the extrovert Susan. Tom should work on being a great Tom and not a good Susan. Ooh. Because he's not going to be able to. You can't change that. I'm an introvert, and we're going to get a lot more into this later in the show.
I think you're lying to me. Just for the sake of the show.
Absolutely not. And this is something you and I talked earlier in the week. This is something I've done a ton of research on. I've read a lot of books about, and after the break, we're going to get more into it. But you have to embrace that and just focus on being the best version of that introvert that you are. Because you're never going to be an extrovert. Nope. But what an introvert and what an extrovert is something that is very misunderstood in our society. Mm-hmm. People have it all wrong, and we're going to get them straightened out here on the show today.
Yeah, Mr. Introvert over here is leaning into our break too much. So we're going to open up the phone lines here a little bit later, 804-454-1366. That's 804-454-1366. If you want to call in to be a part of the show, we do create a small window for some folks to call in to share some knowledge and experience on this topic, but more importantly, really, we're your on-call coach. We're here if you're struggling with a situation, especially if you feel like that you're just an introvert living in an extroverted world. We've got some advice for you.
We do.
So feel free to call into the show. When we come back, we're going to start to break down a little bit more of why it's cool to be an introvert.
That's it.
You're listening to The Great People Show.
Don't go anywhere.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Great People Show. Man, that makes you want to sing. It does not make me want to sing.
Please don't.
So before we left to break, we were talking about this whole introversion, extroversion. This is a deep-seated, difficult issue that so many people deal with because we are living in an extroverted world. Like this entire planet that we live on is an extroverted world.
At least it appears to be.
Exactly. We are very, I almost said the word manipulated. I guess I just did now. Mm-hmm. But we are very controlled by what we get from the media, Facebook, TV, radio, you name it. And the only personalities that are typically promoted on there or highlighted on there are very extroverted personalities.
That's true, but a lot of people who, like you were saying, you were picking on me before the break, saying that when I was mentioning how I'm an introvert, and you said you're absolutely not, but I am, and I've been fortunate. I've met a lot of celebrities over the years. I've worked with some lower level celebrities, but people who on a daily basis are either on stage or in front of people, and I would say that about 80 to 90% of all of those people that I have ever worked with have been introverts. As soon as they got off the stage, as soon as they are done with what they are doing, all they want to do is shut themselves in a room. I'll give you a huge example that and he talks about this a lot on his show now.
Okay.
Howard Stern.
Yep.
Huge introvert.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, and I know we're gonna get more into this, but at the end of the day, the biggest test as to whether you're an introvert or an extrovert is not about how shy you are. It's about one simple thing. Does being around other people in social situations energize you, or does it drain you?
Right.
If it energizes you, generally speaking, you're an extrovert. If it drains you and then you need time on your own to recharge, you are an introvert.
Yep.
And I can tell you that social situations in no way, shape, or form energize me. They completely drain me. I then need to go curl up in a corner somewhere, and then I'm ready to be back around people again.
And it makes a whole lot of sense, because if you do look at performers on stage, they're not around other people, meaning, well, okay, technically they're around a ton of people, but they're not interfacing. They're not interacting with those people.
Right.
They're just up there performing. It's them by themselves, and there is no energy going back and forth. It's just energy coming from them. I've experienced something similar. I've not had the exposure you've had to a lot of people that have been on stage. For many years, we worked with all the Miss Virginia ladies, and I was always shocked with how many of those were introverted.
Yeah, a ton.
Always
of them.
shocked.
And it's understanding that you can be a very outgoing person and still be an introvert.
Absolutely. And that's where we want to bring some light to this particular topic on the show today. This introvert versus extrovert topic is so critical on our path to success, because it really relates to how we view ourselves.
Yeah.
Are we pretending to be someone we aren't to fit someone else's mold of us? And it just so happens that the I versus E conversation is the heart of kind of how we label ourselves. And on Monday, we put a research question out on all the social media platforms. Do you need to be extroverted in order to be successful? Why or why not? And it was interesting because most of the answers were no, but. There was always a but.
Yeah.
And the whole extroverted in order to be successful, and that's where some people said, well, what do you mean by success? There were a lot of people that were, in fact, one Ron told us he was a card. He started the comment by saying he was a card-carrying introvert.
Right.
So, and I've met Ron before, and he's right. When you first meet him, he's soft-spoken, he's gentle, he's a great listener. He's not the one that is going to be out there in the middle of a party surrounded by folks, because he's telling stories. And we have a really humorous take on this difference between introversion and extroversion that we might actually want to start to break down a little bit as we move through the show, just to poke fun at the ultra extroverts. It's the ultra introverts and the ultra extroverts.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think like us, being on the radio means we're extroverted. Folks, there's nobody here.
Right.
Like, there's 3 people in this room right now.
That's it.
And one of them won't even talk to us.
That's right. That's right. He sits in a corner.
We have to pull his teeth just to get him on the show, which I might add is by far the most introverted guy in the room of 3 right now.
I would agree.
I would agree. Yeah, you, Asher. Yeah, you, buddy.
And he's giving a thumbs up.
Asher,
No?
Go ahead and get your mic hot, buddy. You know what this is going to mean. This is going to mean Asher's going to be fun. Asher, how introverted do you consider yourself?
Not very.
No, come on now.
I spend most of my life meeting with people and talking with people. I don't know how you could possibly ever consider me an introvert.
Well, that's the point of today's show, is that because we are in vocations that require us to come across and be seen and communicate as extroverted doesn't mean that we are.
So
You're going to have to enlighten me on this because
Okay.
I would say that I have been an introvert for most of my life, but I would not say that I currently am because my entire lifestyle is not introverted.
I see you as a total introvert.
Okay.
So
wow.
let me give
My world's changed.
Let me give
Yeah.
an example. Let's see how Asher relates to this.
Okay.
So, and this goes back to Tom, who we've talked about before the break. So I'm an introvert, and like all three of us in the room right now, a lot of my responsibilities are around sales. So I have to meet with people constantly.
Have to. You're required in your job.
That's right. And I attend a lot of conferences.
Now, can I call a timeout real quick?
Absolutely.
If you weren't in this job and if you didn't have a job that required you to do that, would you be seeking out more people to talk to?
No.
Yeah, so you are
But I
pulled
sought
and
out
pushed
this
in.
job so I could talk with people, so I wouldn't be isolated.
Well, but being
On the radio?
introverts do not want to be isolated. By and large, shy people might want to
true.
be isolated. Introverts don't want to be isolated.
That's true.
So going back to
very
Tom,
true.
Tom is asking, well, how can I adjust myself? I'm never going to be an extrovert, but
Yep.
how can I adjust myself? So in my case, I go to a lot of conferences, and at these conferences, they tend to have large cocktail parties and networking events with 100 people in the room, most of which who don't know each other. Now, I hate those events. And I don't use the word hate very often, but I can tell you I despise.
Well, how does that manifest? When you say hate, like what are the emotions that are running through you?
I feel nauseous. I get very nervous. I, like most introverts, as we'll talk about later in the show, I can't stand small talk.
Yep.
Hate small talk. So I don't like a huge room with a bunch of strangers. So what do I do at these conferences to still be able to do my job? Well, what I do before the conference, I target out people on the invite list who I know I want to meet, and I don't know these people.
Mm-hmm.
And I put together every night a different dinner where I'll have myself and usually 2 to 3 of these other people, and we go to a dinner, because at a table with 2 or 3 people that I don't know,
It's totally different.
totally different. But when I have to go to that networking cocktail hour, I will usually go do a circle in the room once or twice, and then I'm out the door.
Yep.
So I've been able to adjust myself, knowing and embracing my personality to still be successful at these conferences. Because again, that networking event, it's not going to be my thing.
So it's funny you mentioned this whole small talk, and Asher, I want your opinion on this, because Asher, you and I have seen this, Asher hasn't. We found this really interesting chart where you can you can actually see how much of on this spectrum, introvert, extrovert you are. On one end so it goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. Shy, introvert, extrovert, obnoxious. Now, keep in mind, folks, this whole thing is meant to be a little tongue-in-cheek and funny. So don't get too upset because of the vernacular here. Talking with strangers is one of them on here. You just talked about that, meeting people you don't know.
Right.
Asher, you said you got into this field because you wanted to interact with more people. So it's interesting to find out if it's more people you've never met before or people that you just kind of stay in relationship with. Is the shy person will cower. The introvert don't encourage small talk. The extrovert talk about anything with everyone, and the obnoxious talk about you with everyone. Okay.
I like to think of myself as an ambivert.
Here we go.
I've spent
come on.
most
He's been
of my
reading the
life.
notes.
I'm not reading the notes. I'm watching the board.
Okay. Good.
I don't have eyes in the back of my head.
Okay.
So if you create that rumor now, any kids I have would.
Well, when you put it on the
benefit.
radio, it's no longer a rumor.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
this is
it's
the radio.
official. Yeah,
you
well,
guys
this is
didn't tell
not
me this
fake
was.
news.
You didn't tell me this was the
This
radio.
is not fake news. We are the real deal here, folks. So, Asher, explain to the audience what an ambivert is, since you are Mr. Smarty Pants and want to bring up these complicated words that were in our notes.
Oh wow! You dropped the challenge.
Ambivert.
Ambivert.
Already upset about
I would say
this.
my natural inclination is toward shyness at one point in my life and toward introversion. But my lifestyle is not introverted, and it's intentionally not introverted. So I force myself to get out there because I like.
Whoa! I force myself to get out here.
I feel a lecture coming on.
This, well, you know in the line of work that I'm in, Asher, that I have to listen carefully to every word that other people say.
You set me up for this.
So
didn't you?
Asher was just set up,
Yep.
and he just used the terms, I force myself.
Yep.
that is a clear indication of natural introversion.
Yep.
That's not a bad thing.
Not
In
at
fact,
all.
I commend you, Asher, and I am so thankful that you have seen this in yourself, that you can say, I need to go do this to get out of my comfort zone.
That's right.
I think that is absolutely critically important. And maybe there are people listening to the show right now that just calling us is out of your comfort zone.
Oh, tons of people.
Most people. So
Yeah.
I'm going to challenge you introverts to call into the show and just talk to us if you want to.
Or
No,
extroverts
actually, if
who
you
are
don't want
dying to call
yeah,
us.
The people that want to. It's the ones that won't. Yeah. So to be a part of the show, it's 804-454-1366. That's 804-454-1366. We are talking about, do you need to be an introvert, extrovert to be successful in this life, or can I just be myself? Can I just be myself?
You can be yourself.
Can I just be me?
Please, JJ.
Can I just be me?
Be you. Don't force yourself to be someone who are not. During the break, we are going to counsel Asher.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to show that he doesn't have to be forced out of his comfort zone to be successful. Thank you all for listening to the Great People Show. When we get back, we're going to keep talking about this topic and hopefully figure out that it's okay just to be whoever you want to be.
Just be you, baby.
Just be you. That should be a song. Maybe it is a song. Who knows? Great People Show. Come on back. Welcome back. Let's do this day, folks. We're here, your on-call coach, your guide to greatness, so that you can do this day. We're doing it with you.
That's right.
To be part of the show, 804-454-1366. And we're talking about this need to be ourselves, specifically wrapped around the whole introversion, extroversion, and Asher got all fancy with us and started talking about this whole ambivert thing, which he actually never defined.
Yeah, we had
never.
It's because we went to a break.
Okay,
Well,
I don't know if
Asher,
you guys can handle
technically,
it.
actually, I don't know if you were getting to the answer or not, but whenever you started to talk about forcing yourself into situations, I called you out on the carpet, and it got pretty ugly.
You interrupted me? Is that what you mean?
That's what we do. Well, we have a very defined, limited amount of time here.
That's
We
right.
got to get to the point.
That's right. And so I would challenge Asher, and I would challenge our listeners to think about, all of you have at least one person who you know who is the genuine extrovert. Now, JJ, I'm going to name somebody who you and I, a mutual friend of ours, we'll call him Will because that's his actual name.
PM?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Will is somebody who goes into a room with 100 strangers and absolutely cannot help himself but to go and introduce himself and to every single person, and he loves it, and he leaves that room more energized and more charged than he came into it.
And naturally
he
it
lives for
attracts
that.
a lot. You don't.
Yes.
The super strong extroverts don't even have to work hard to go and meet everybody. They just start to draw in some other people.
No, it's who they're. He can't. Will has told me, because he and I talk about this a lot, because he is the most extroverted extrovert who I know. He says that if he is in a room and there is somebody that he has not met by the end of whatever the event is, he leaves there feeling guilty.
Wow. So there's, and you mentioned this right at the top of the show, this whole concept of introversion, extroversion is about energy. It is seen as one thing in our society as, oh, you like to talk to people, you like to be in this room, you like to mingle with people. And we've established already, there's a lot of introverts that are faking it. And here's my confession. I have to do it. You've mentioned multiple times here and last week that you're an introvert. So am I. I'm an introvert too.
I'm glad you got that out there.
I am an introvert by nature. I am not naturally drawn into groups of people, and that blows people's minds because I have been in Dale Carnegie as a franchise owner, a salesperson, and a trainer for 17 years. And people say, that just doesn't make sense to me, or that surprises me. And I look at my vocation and being on the radio as something that grows me. If you're in anything where you're just a perfect fit and you're natural and you're a natural extrovert and you have to be an extrovert and it just works with you, the one challenge I'd have for you folks is, are you really outside of your comfort zone growing? Because one of the reasons why I do what I do, I have to be in front of people every single day that are depending on me to help them sharpen their sword just a little bit more. And if I'm not also doing it with them, then I don't feel like I can have as much credibility with that.
Yeah.
That I'm not here to be the almighty that you can turn to just get the answers. Like before any training program, workshop, anything that I do, if I don't think it, if I don't say it, I'm certainly thinking it. I will probably get more out of this than you will.
Right.
Because I'm up here pushing myself out of my comfort zone because it's not naturally who I am.
Right. And that's a good thing, but you're not on the shy end of the spectrum, JJ.
No way,
and
dude.
that's the important differentiation to make, I think. That an
I'm an
introvert doesn't
ambivert.
make you shy, and being an extrovert doesn't make you obnoxious.
Right.
There are shy people and there are obnoxious people.
Yep.
But being one of those two things does not herd you into being an introvert or extrovert. So again, people just need to think about where you fall, embrace that, and live your life and live your interactions in a way that works with that plays it as a strength, because it's not a weakness to be an introvert.
No, not at all. No, I think it's a huge asset. I think it's a gift. Many or most introverts see it as a liability. I think it depends on what line of work they're in.
Mm-hmm.
The most successful introverts, they embrace it and turn it into their driving force in life. And this is what I appreciate about introverts. This is what I deeply appreciate about introverts. Introverts are better listeners, mainly because they just don't like to talk a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're not talking, you should be naturally listening. I think introverts have more patience. They're calmer. They can keep things under control. Jim Collins established this in his book, Good to Great, with level 5 leaders, that the level 4 leader is the extrovert. The level 5 leader is the introvert that knows how to keep a level head and keep calm, especially in times of chaos and turmoil, which leads to better decision-making. Extroverts, I think, can talk their way into they think they can talk their way into just about anything, and they're not listening. They don't... They can also seem as fake or phony. Like I know a lot of folks that are very extroverted and they put people off.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably getting into that obnoxious realm at the same time.
And they certainly could put a lot of introverts off because they can be exhausting for introverts to be around.
Gretchen from Facebook said, introverts and extroverts are really about where you get your energy from. Do you feel more energy when you're around others or when you are by yourself?
Yeah. Yep, and we were talking about that earlier in the show.
I'm going to shoot off a definition. I think this came from Wikipedia because we know everything on the internet is correct.
Yes.
Extroversion is the state of primarily obtaining gratification from outside oneself. Introversion is the state of being predominantly interested in one's own mental health. Introverts are typically perceived as more reserved or reflective. We need both of those in the world, don't we?
We do. We do. And while I know 99% of everything on the internet is true, I agree with that, but I think at the same time, like you were talking before, I think introverts can be good listeners, JJ, but I think you love to talk. I like to talk.
It's good. I don't know if I agree with that.
I think I've known you a long time.
Do I love to talk? Ask her, is this true?
I think that
Does JJ like to talk?
I didn't say you talk too much.
He's not even getting involved. Look at this.
I think you like to talk. Well, Asher's there and he's being
his introverted, reflective self.
ambiverted.
He's
ambiverted,
which we still have not
you.
defined.
God, now you've insulted him. So I think
you think I like to talk a lot.
I do. I like to talk.
Yeah, I can see that.
I like to talk.
I can see that.
So I think again, I don't think that you can slap a sticker on every specific personality trait. I think the energy thing, where you get your energy from, I really think that's the driving factor, because I think that is universal between introverts and extroverts.
So let's weave in a few concepts or a few things that we've talked about. This whole extrovert, introverted, and right in the middle is the ambivert. Finally, we get to define this word that we keep dancing around. Ambivert is a mix of both. And by the way, we are all a mix of both. I do not care how obnoxious someone is. There is a level of introverted within them somewhere.
Okay.
And let me just, I guess, take a moment to talk about where this whole thing comes from, because there was a lot of confusion or maybe questioning around, are you born introverted or you're born extroverted? Science, especially neuroscience, have already come to the point where we can study people through their entire life cycle to really figure out where the behaviors come from, where the motivators, the driving forces come from, where people's soft skill competencies come from. And this is not it's not just an outward behavior. Extroversion, introversion, being in an ambivert, this is not just an outward observable behavior you see in other people. That's how we're judged. That's how we judge ourselves. That's, if you're listening to this and you struggle with it, that's probably where you're focused in on is I need to be more outgoing. By the way, I rarely run into people that say, I need to calm myself down a little bit. I'm too much of an extrovert. It's usually the other way around, like 99.9%. That it's not until you get into your early and your mid-20s that these things start to become more hardwired into you. And when I say hardwired, think Jell-O and not concrete, because we are still malleable our entire life, but we become extraordinarily less malleable once we get into our late 20s and beyond. So when someone in their 40s say, I am who I am, they're absolutely correct. But there is a little bit of room for flexibility. So when you see people transform in their teens from an introverted maybe into an extroverted person, this is very, very possible. For the rest of us that get older, we have to manage that because we probably have settled into that behavior trait, and that behavior trait is more about frequently interacting with other people. Where do we get our energy from? From a driving force motivator perspective, it's more about our emotional need to be more social. And these are things that are actually very measurable in people.
They are. And I think it's a two-way street. And I wish that I know he's not listening because I know he's out of town this morning. But if Will were listening, I'd love for him to call in, because I think he has talked to me about his struggles. So here are his struggles. He lives in a neighborhood that has a community pool.
Okay.
And he said, when I go to the pool with my family, I feel like I have to talk with everybody else who is at the pool.
Yeah.
And
they're looking at him funny if he's not.
And we were having lunch a couple months ago, and he said, I have come to the point in my life where I realized that I have got to realize that it is okay if I am not friends with everyone.
Yeah.
He struggles with that because he feels this burning desire that drives him and feeds him to be friends with everyone who he comes in contact with. So much to the point that it's a nuisance to him and it weighs on him.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have still some time for callers if anyone wants to call in, 804-454-1366. We are calling all introverts. Calling all introverts. Come on to the radio, because it's what you need to do to get out of your comfort zone. You've been listening to The Great People Show. All right, welcome back to the show. We just had a comment on our Facebook live stream that I think Liz nailed it. And it's funny, she called herself off the chart extrovert. Gosh, Liz, I'd love to talk to you. I don't know if we could get you off the phone if that's the case. Success depends on the match to the job, and I could not agree more. If we're talking business, introversion versus extroversion doesn't really matter. Both succeed as executives and upper managers. Absolutely. And I spent a lot of my work, lot of my personal practice is about job fit.
Right.
Being in the training and coaching industry, there's nothing more I wouldn't call it upsetting, but maybe discouraging is when people are really looking for a better way to do things. Mm-hmm. And we both realize pretty quickly they're not in the right job because they can't sustain the amount of energy that's needed, whether they're introverted needing to be extroverted needing to be introverted, because we're all floating a little bit. I've done a lot of work with engineers. Those folks never really got into engineering to work with a lot of people, but some do have more extroverted tendencies, which starts to lay them up to being more managers. Because in any type of technical type of field, engineering, nursing, whatever it is, those folks are seen as having more people skills. So what do we do with those folks? We promote them into managers.
Yep.
But unfortunately, a lot of nurses and engineers, while they get identified for that and they may get more energy by being a manager, they have to leave some of the day-to-day job that they do that they loved to begin with. I've seen a lot of nursing managers go back to being nurses because as much as they loved managing people, they loved the patients more.
That makes sense. So let me challenge you with a question, JJ.
Challenge me, brother.
So you were talking about Tom going way back to the beginning of the show, and we were talking about how he's a millennial.
Yep.
And What do you think about our society moving in a direction where most of the communication, especially amongst younger people, are in the form of text message and are not face-to-face? So as introverts, we do have to come out of our comfort zone, and we do have to learn how to interact with people, even in uncomfortable situations to us. So how much in your business are you seeing people that are just more socially inept than ever because you don't have to get face-to-face? People don't even talk on the phone anymore.
Oh, this is an epidemic. This is an epidemic in our society of what I just mentioned before we went to break, that up until your early to mid-20s, I'll reinforce this, up until your early to mid-20s, you are very, very malleable as far as your behaviors go, your driving forces and motivators, and your soft skill competencies, your emotional intelligence. Some of these things you have a chance to develop your whole life. Others, those chances diminish, because this is science, folks. This is not JJ's opinion. This is what neuroscience has already proven. And when we have teenagers, actually, my 8-year-old son knows how to text me from his iPad.
Yep,
this is freaking blowing my mind. And now that he knows how to spell and all these things, he's texting me, which is very cute, by the way. The cuteness factor is absolutely off the chart. Nothing like telling my 8-year-old son, "Love you, buddy," on a text message. I hope that continues on for the rest of his life. So when we're really talking about teenagers, when they want phones and they're only communicating, they are getting these behaviors hardwired into them. This whole introversion, extroversion thing is going to start to lean more towards introversion. And the other big factors that need to be considered in our world right now is the fact that we have a society where if a task or a job can be automated, it's going to be.
Yes.
That your development over the next 10 to 20 years is going to actually be around how well you can communicate and influence and innovate as a person. Like now more than ever, the skill of interacting with other people, working with other people, is even more critical. And that's why I call this an absolute epidemic, because if we don't do something about it now as a society, we're going to have big challenges. We're going to have huge issues. So back to your original question, you can't be surprised. You can't be surprised. And I just called to see if, or called out Liz to call us. Our off the chart extrovert is on the phone. Liz, welcome to the Great People Show.
Hey, Liz.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. What's your comment for us today?
Oh, I was just listening to your conversation this morning. Of course, I'm an extrovert, so I have to chime in.
Do it.
No, I was actually interested in just what you were talking about with the kids. I've got kids of my own, and I told them, you're not getting out of my house. Of course, you would expect that, with me being an extrovert. You're not getting them out of my house without being able to have a conversation with people.
And how old are your kids?
We have lots of rules about not being able to use your phone at the table or when we're in social situations. Even if they're not extroverted, I kind of make them do it because I know it's necessary.
How old are they?
I've got a 12-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old son.
Okay, so they're right in the middle of this onslaught of technology, and maybe you notice this too. It's the peer pressure because all their friends have the technology, which forces them into the technology even further. So I'm really curious. How do you stand your ground on this? Because I think there's a lot of parents struggling with this.
Well, honestly, if we go out, they'll try to pull out their phones. Like, we'll go out to a restaurant, they'll try to pull out their phones. They know immediately, put it away. Like, it's just absolutely not an acceptable thing. And if they were to push it with me, they know that I would take the phone away.
Well, there's that extrovertedness.
So there's a time for them to be able to do that, and there's a time that they need to be able to sit and have a conversation. And, I'm really serious about it. And they know for a fact that I will take the phone away if they try to push it with me.
And Liz, do you see in your children any specific extroverted or introverted natures in them? Like, which direction do you think they already are going?
Well, it's hard to tell because they ended up with two kind of extroverted parents. So, so my husband is also extroverted, not quite as much as I am. I think, they've so far, maybe, I don't know if it's environment, I don't know if it's nature versus nurture, but so far, I call us pack animals. they don't like to be, off by themselves too much, and they seem to get their energy, like you guys were talking about. That's spot on. They seem to get their energy from being with the group.
Yep.
So far so good.
Well, Liz, I'm real curious. Can I switch a subject on you? I've got to ask this question.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said you and your husband are both extroverts. How in the world do you pull that off?
What do you mean? What would be your concern with that?
So, and this is what we found on social media very much so, that there's always this relational offsetting between an extrovert and an introvert. It's kind of like a yin and a yang. It's kind of like two puzzle pieces fitting together very nicely. And in my experience, if you've got two extroverts, you just have some almost too many butting heads and personalities going with that. Do you experience that? And if you do, how do you manage it in the relationship?
Absolutely not. And again, I think some of that actually isn't so much tied to the extroversion versus introversion. I've seen actually problems with that. So I know people who've had marriages where one person was an introvert and wanted to kind of stay home and didn't get their energy from people. Yeah. And the other one wanted to go out and be with people, and that's where she got her energy. Mm-hmm. And it actually caused a huge conflict in their marriage because one wanted to kind of, be home and kind of have that cave time to re-energize, and one wanted to be out. So at the end of a hard day, with your kids and at work, and one wanted to stay, one wanted to go, and it actually caused problems.
I can see that.
Our issues in our marriage aren't related to that.
So well, we don't have enough time to get too far into that, but that's awesome though. Liz, thanks for calling the show.
And Liz, just one question for you: do you believe in ambiversion?
I do, and I think that my husband is more balanced. I think he's absolutely, if you look at the scale, on a scale of 1 to 20, I'm a 19, and he's probably right there in the middle of a 10. So yeah, I think that there are people who are definitely more balanced, and you got people like me who are definitely more extreme.
And Liz, for some reason, Asher wanted to butt in and ask that question because he just feels like he found someone else on his side for some reason. It's like
I just can't resist. It's an opportunity to talk to somebody. It's an opportunity to talk to somebody. I can't resist it. It's my inner extrovert. It's outside of the ambiversion.
You haven't won anything, Ambervert. Now just calm down over there. Well, Liz, thanks for calling the show. We appreciate your listening.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Do you believe in Amber? Do you believe in the tooth fairy?
Yeah, right? Yeah, I mean, how far do you want to take this, Ash?
By the way, before we go, I did like we had a lot of Facebook comments on this week. I really liked one of them, and I think this is applicable whether you own your own business or if you work for someone else, because we all have a brand, whether that brand is a company you own or a company you work for, or just the brand of yourself.
Love this.
And our mutual friend, Dave Saunders, very smart guy.
Owner of Madison and Main Branding and Marketing.
Yes, super guy, said you don't have to be an extrovert, but your brand does.
Boom. That was so powerful. Powerful. And and by the way, he does own a branding company, and the tagline is bold brands win. Mm-hmm. He's in the branding world. And if you're listening to this show right now, you have a brand. You have a brand. Back to this chart, you may have a brand of shyness, of introversion, extroversion, and unfortunately, some of you may have a brand of being obnoxious.
Yep.
I wish you didn't, but the reality is you might. I know there's been probably someone in this world that has walked away from a conversation with me and said, man, that guy's obnoxious. Never meant to. Mm-hmm. And I want to cover a couple of these because I think they do tie into the brand thing. I love that comment. We have to be conscious of our brand, especially in the business world, that in the area of people, the shy person, people will make you anxious or nervous. Introvert, people can be draining and need to recharge afterwards. I get that. Mm-hmm. In the world of people, for extroverts, they can be energizing. This is my favorite. If you're obnoxious, people are playthings. I have seen this. I have seen this in social interactions where people are playthings to the most extroverted person.
They're just pawns in your game.
It's like the ball of yarn to the cat, right? The laser pointer that just can't get away from them. And this is just an absolute critical topic that we're talking about here today. One of my other favorite comments from Chris Jones: we live in an extroverted world, especially in business. I make myself extroverted when I need to be. I go to events where I don't know anyone. I reach out to meet people I don't know. I speak to a group of all sizes. I manage myself, knowing that after those events, I will need some time to recharge. That's me too. I need recharging time. Now, we have very similar lives here. when I go home, Sam is way more of an extrovert than I am by nature. So she needs more of me to charge her up, and I'm needing to go and just huddle in the corner.
Yes.
So we need to offset that every once in a
My
while.
wife is more of an introvert than I am, so we don't have that dynamic. But I come home and, some days she'll say, well, how are you feeling? And I'll say, well, I have a splitting headache. I've been talking to people all day. And as we go, JJ, I love this one driving it home point. Be completely authentic and honest with yourself and others around you. You'll be surprised and amazed at how others are feeling the same way.
Yeah. Are you trying to be someone that you're not?
Mm-hmm.
Just be yourself. Be the authentic self that God created you to be. That if you're a deep introvert, that was there for a reason, that this is a gift, this is a skill, this has been a blessing put upon you. Embrace that. Run with it. Cherish it. Because this is what makes you great in this world. Specifically, people need people like you. Thank you all for tuning in today. You've been listening to The Great People Show.